This is the Zim Christmas special, and it originally starts here in the future, and then goes back into the past through the story of this guy. It was sort of supposed to be a takeoff on most of these Christmas specials that we used to see as kids. I think they're still on TV these days. You know, all the Rankin Bass stuff with the talking, singing snowmen and Rudolph and all that. But of course, this is a very Zim-like Christmas. The room that they were sitting in, it looks sort of modern, or it looks sort of it doesn't look modern actually. It looks a little bit dated. And the thing is, it doesn't play off as a 2 million year in the future room. Um, the idea was that the kids were supposed to be these floating little humans. They've evolved and they can float along. And I don't know what was up with the room, but it varied back and forth between two different designs. One was the super futuristic room, and the other was the old style room. This episode was okayed for production after the series was canceled, sort of as a favor to Mary Harrington from New York. Margie Cohen, I believe, okayed this to be done. The script was written, and this was actually recorded on the last day, on the day the show was canceled. It was going to be part of our second season. It was already in works. So we just had to, when we got the okay, we just had to head into production. I believe part of it was already designed before we were canceled. The Minnie Moose character, I'm sure a lot of people wonder about that, was actually going to be a character that came along in an episode called Nubs of Doom, which was supposed to be before this. It was somewhere between Fry Cook or Gas Taster Pork and the Christmas special. And it never got made. It got storyboarded, but it never got animated. And it was to introduce Minnie Moose as a new companion for Zim. And Minnie Moose was supposed to be sort of this all-purpose sidekick, but never spoke, but could do amazing things. And in the episode, he could quell crowds, and stop floods. But you'd never see it. He always did it off screen. So that was always supposed to be the joke with Minnie Moose. Minnie Moose was originally taken from a song, or Jonan got the idea from a song by Phantomas, which was the Mike Patton band that did a director's cut CD, which was all film scores or the film title scores. They just redid them with rock, and they did The Omen. And in the Omen song, they're chanting Minnie Moose, and Jonan laughed his ass off about that song and decided to create this character, Minnie Moose. Jonan's idea that was going to go into the rest of the season was, and into the further seasons, was that Zim was going to start to have a whole cadre of companions. He was going to end up with, I think, 7 or 8, something. Jonan was saying 7 or 8 sidekicks that would walk around behind him, and luckily it never happened. It would have just been a mess to do that much. It was probably one of the worst decisions that could have been made. There were a lot of bad decisions made in this series, but that would have been a horrible one, because we would have always had to have drawn and animated all these useless companions that really didn't bring anything to the show. Minnie Moose brought absolutely nothing to the series. It was really the most useless character, and it really signaled the end. It was the sort of thing that most really bad TV shows do when they're in their 7th or 8th season. They bring in the annoying little sidekicks that really don't do anything. They're just cute kids or gimmicky little characters that hang around, don't really achieve much. Scrooge was supposed to start showing up actually around this point as well. In Zim's house, Scrooge and his Sir robot were going to start just hanging out with Zim. So it was going to be, Scrooge and his Sir, Gurr, and Minnie Moose following Zim around by the 10th or so episode of the season, of the second season. This was somewhere between the 9th and the 10th. It sort of got played around with, but ended up being the 7th because of the cancellation. This was boarded by Ian Graham and who was it? There was Ian and Chris Graham boarded on this show, and Ray Angram, and Louis boarded a bunch of it. Louis Del Carmen boarded a bunch at the beginning. A lot of board artists worked on this episode. Brian Konietzko, I think, did some of it. I believe it was written entirely by Jonan. You really talked up this script, and they really, you know, we had a choice. This episode, it was either do this episode or we could switch out Gaz Taster of Pork with two other Zim 11 minutes. And I wish that we would have done the switch out, because there were some really nice episodes that were already boarded that I think would have been a lot better to show than this Christmas episode, which is fairly poorly written and sort of just squeezed out. We didn't have a 3D budget for it. We had to cut the budget enormously, so we had about half the crew working on this episode. But I think Mary and Jonan wanted this episode because they got, you know, an extra little bit of cash by doing this. One of the episodes that would have been switched out and done instead of this one would be Nubs of Doom, which is the beginning of Mini Moose. So we would have had Nubs of Doom, and I can't remember the other one. I think Invader Punchy, which is one where Zim mistakes Punchy, one of the classmates, the new classmate in school, for an invader. He thinks he's an invader trying to hustle Zim's territory and beat him to the punch. But it's just Dib screwing with Zim. Really nice multi-level shots in this episode. This script went through a lot of revision. It really got worked and reworked by New York and the executives. And I can't remember the original versions, but I remember there was just a lot. There was a lot of loose ends and a lot of just horrible threads in the story that needed polishing. And it took a while to get this into order. It was really sick letting the crew go. It was January 17th, 2002. And Richard Horvitz and the sound recording crew, they just recorded this episode. And then everybody was ushered into this main area. And we're just told the show is canceled, and that's it. Next day, get out. You know, there were like about half the crew or a third of the crew just told that the next day they have to get out of the building. They have to give back all their pass cards, get everything out of their offices. And it was amazing the amount of theft that then went on, because everybody was angry that not only was it canceled, but they were shoved out so forcibly. Remember, all the promo artwork that was on the walls got torn down and carried off, and there was just a lot of supplies taken and everything. But Nick really handled it sorely. They just did not do a good job at shutting down our show. This section out here really is probably one of the worst established sections in the episode. We had a lot of problem. You could almost never tell what was going on in this section. The shots were either too far or too close, and we had to rework quite a bit of it.